Hello! Welcome to Gen Z Meets World podcast. I am Aisha.
I'm Ahmed.
And today we'll be talking about stamp collecting, which is a hobby that we've been, hobbying. We've been practicing. Stamp collecting is one of our hobbies, which we've had since we were younger. Okay, so what I always find interesting about stamp collecting, every time we're talking about stamp collecting, is the fact that, like, I can't remember the exact history of it. In fact, it wasn't me who read it. It was our elder sister. I don't know where she read it. It might have been on Reddit. No. But she told us that, like, stamp collecting originally was like one of those things that children do, where they just collect things, like how we collect all kinds of things. We collect like bottle caps, or some people collect rocks or shells or flowers or twigs. So it's one of those, but it's one of the ones that really like caught on, like, and people really they like
there's like a certain group of people who really do that with passion.
So
I mean, not that people don't passionately collect rocks
or
I guess,
twigs
or shells, but
like stamps is one of those that got into, and who knows, maybe postal services might have capitalized on it, like, because then they can sell stamps. But like anyway, so I've always found it very interesting because initially it was just one of those things that people do, but eventually it became a hobby, and it became a
culture.
It's like a staple. It's something that when a person says they collect stamps, it has the implication of like people who are I don't know how to say it, but like in a certain sense, like who's cultured in a certain way.
There's, like, taking from the meme that people usually make. I see you're a man of culture.
That kind it has that kind of
not
like stature.
Not saying that everyone else is not cultured, but then it is that
from just one of these things that people do, it becomes such a prominent hobby. So how did you started collecting stamps? Like, what's
my earliest memory
to it?
To like stamps in general was the glow in the dark nocturnal. It was the glow in the dark series of regarding about nocturnal animals. So in the series, basically they had like all these nocturnal, I think it was local wildlife.
It was like some it was a series of like nocturnal wildlife or something. So they made it glow in the dark because it's nocturnal. It's
so
cool
it was
feature.
like having that really sort of like increased the fascination is what I feel, but the fascinating factor of it, I guess,
made it more fascinating.
Fascinating for me. So as like, especially for like first impression. So
like stamp is cool.
Because it's not, because before that stamps, I've made like certain things which are like supposed to be sort of like stamps while playing at home. But then they're like just these things that you paste on I don't even know what the purpose are. What the purpose is. It's just something that you have to put on your envelope. So but then with that, it's like, so there's like these special
cool stamps.
It doesn't have to, like, first of all, stamps don't need to be square. They can be,
they've never been square in the first place. They just almost square.
But like,
they can be any shape at all.
When the mindset or like the perception I had before that, it's always like these square or rectangle thing,
squarish.
But they're like, I don't think they're not all the ones. Are they all?
They're like rectangle-ish.
I think all.
But various shapes.
When we went to the exhibition or something about,
it was a launch.
It was a stamp launching. So we saw other stamps as well, and they were like of various shapes. Of like, first of all, they can come in like circles and triangles, but then
they
even these complex.
Like if it's a bee, it can be a shape of a bee.
Yeah, it can be a shape of a bee, and so many things. And there's like those miniature sheets. Those are really cool. So that was like my first introduction. I can't remember what year was that. I was really small. 2007, 2008. 9?
No. That's too old. I think
that too old?
I can't remember.
I feel like 2009 makes more sense.
A certain year. But anyway, so how I think I've always like, because our parents were stamp collectors.
Yeah.
Our
Parents
our
are.
father was. Our mother is. So, but our parents are stamp collectors, so they collect stamps. So they also like introduce it, because one thing that I really like and appreciate about our parents is that when they bring us up, they really try to like sort of like make us participate in their own activities,
Yeah.
So that way, like, it's cool in two ways. One is that they get to do the things they like that they otherwise need to do in their me time and all that, together with their children, so they can like double, they can fulfill their responsibility and do stuff they like. And B, for us children, it encourages participation in like family activities, which really helps us to not feel neglected
left
or
out.
Which I do want to explore one day in a different topic. But anyway, so regarding stamps, so they like always show us stamps, talk about stamp collecting. I remember them showing their stamp collection and stuff like that. So I have always been, one thing about little me, I have always been interested in the things our parents were interested in,
Yeah.
So they're like, stamps are cool. I'm like, okay, what is cool about stamps? And I try to find it. So then I was just like, collecting stamps in general. They're like, here, this is your first stamp. I'm like, oh, my first stamp, So like, I would just like be interested in stamps in general. I just collect stamps in general. But eventually, as we grew older, our parents brought us to certain, what do you call those, like stamp fairs?
Stamp fairs, yeah.
Yeah.
Stamp fairs.
So it will be like many people selling stamps,
or like just exhibiting them.
Or sometimes they trade stamps.
Yeah,
in any form. They're
basically it's just
a fair.
Yeah, a fair where
with stamps.
Stamp collectors and stamp enthusiasts just
gather
together and do whatever they want, basically.
Yeah. So when we started, like, our parents allowed us to like choose, stamps. That was when I remember it was one of the stamp fairs at the library at Petaling Jaya. So during one of the stamp fairs there, held there, our father allowed us to like choose the stamps that we want. And I remember starting to gravitate towards certain stamps. Firstly, there were certain stamps that I was like, okay, I have this series, and I want to complete the series. Or like, oh, this is an interesting series to collect because I like these kind of things. But eventually, I started to really gravitate towards certain old stamps. Like, there's this particular series, I can't remember what the series is called, but it's something about Persekutuan Tanah Melayu. It's an old one. It has that picture of the tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those series and similar series that look similar
to that.
It was like, it came from about the same time, So I started to be very interested in these series. There's a few others that I really like, but that one I remember prominently was a series I really, really love. And I also like a particular Britain, I'm not sure if it's a UK or Britain stamp series. It's the Queen Elizabeth, the one before the machine stamps.
Right.
That Queen Elizabeth, like, the machine stamps, like, just... Yeah, side. There's the one where she's kind of looking this way. Yeah. There's, like, wreaths of flowers. Yeah. So those series. And then, like, that was when I found these stamps, I started to really get into it because I'm like, ooh, these are really nice. And you start to imagine these are things like artifacts and stuff like, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's actually what I really like about these, especially like old stamps, because they're like, they have a lot of these, it's like, taking, it was made on that during that age and like representing just the general thing. Then, but then because it is now in the history, it is representing the history captured right then and there.
It captures a like almost like a time capsule.
Yes.
Yeah.
So back, in that era, they don't. I mean, maybe some of them do think, but then they probably didn't think of like just making this so that people in the future could see what they're making. No, they're just doing
like,
it for
something to commemorate something.
Or literally just definitive. Even the definitive stamps, it's just that.
Yeah.
But then eventually you could look back and you could see.
You can see art styles.
Yes.
You can see what interests people.
Or in the case of what I found the other day was the old spelling in the Jawi script, the original Malay script. So there's an old system of writing which is no longer in use today, and I can't even find any writing about it. Anybody writing about that. But then the only places I could find are like old notes by our grandfather.
Yes.
The Declaration of Independence document, and also the stamps. They had the same system,
because that was
the era. That was what they used. So, I mean, you can't expect them to use it today, and it's not that they purposely use that so that they could keep it there.
It's just what they use.
It's what they use.
It's almost like a social commentary kind of. Like how you see historical records, like amongst historical records are like what do you call it? Those primary sources of like notes by people. Like how the Rihlah Ibn Battuta is such an important historical record for like the social dynamics of different places and stuff like that. So this is similar, that's like what is really fascinating for me about stamp collecting. Like, in a way, it makes me more interested in history, and it makes history more exciting too. Because like it's almost like a direct reflection. Like you're seeing the stamp, and like and it's also cool that for me, one thing that I found really interesting was that when we started to collect stamps, we could see what interests us.
Yes.
Like, for example, Anissa, our sister, she collected stamps because everyone collected stamps. But as she grew older, she realized that she's not like super into stamps. But then she does appreciate like those like stamps which has pictures of things she likes, like butterflies or insects,
or a lot of animals in general.
And
specifically animals she likes because it's with animals that she's not that fascinated in. It's not that much.
But she's interested in most animals.
Exactly.
She's interested in animals in general. So it's just that some animals she loves. So one thing, and what I love about stamps is that when they draw these animals, there's such like detail to them. Because often when when they're making a stamp, often a certain animal, they're trying to capture the animal. Like, for example, take our bird definitive series. They want to capture these birds that we often see around. So they're like, putting in the detail of like what the bird is, how the bird is. And it's almost like, when I was younger, I really loved looking into like encyclopedias so it's almost like those. Because, it's like a documentation.
Because I mean, if you want to put a picture in an illustrated encyclopedia, you want to make it exactly to that. I mean, you could put like a cartoon version of it, but it will not be serving the purpose really, because the purpose is so that you could know.
That's why I really want to own
how it looks.
Grey's Anatomy one day. The Grey's Anatomy. I just want to, because like the detail. Or it's either that, or I draw my own Grey's Anatomy. Who knows? One day. But anyway, it's a far-fetched dream. But yes, and that was also one thing that I really appreciated. Remember one day we met, I can't remember his name. No. The other person, the one who draws for stamps.
Oh.
Remember? Was he professor?
Oh my goodness.
He had a title.
Yeah.
But he draws for stamps.
Yeah.
And I remember he was talking about like his approach in drawing stamps and like how he draw for stamps, and hearing that gives such a nice backstory to like stamps. And he even showed, if I'm saying, he even showed like
he drew the definitive edition, the definitive stamps, the flower definitive stamps.
Yeah. And he showed us like how he drew them, like the
he kind of brought us for a tour in
So having that background detail, like you really see how like when they draw these stamps, it's like from this gigantic large scale, like the detail they put into it to
only to be squeezed into these small things that you just put on these envelopes, which a lot of people actually throw away,
which is sad.
Yeah.
Like, A, sad in the sense of like some other people might appreciate it, and B, sad because like all that paper. But anyway, yes, so it's really, really cool to, see that
history behind it. Like, not history as in like, long-term history, but the history behind this specific.
Yeah. And that detail, like, that's cool.
The details is.
Yeah. But back to like the mirroring interest. So it reminds me like how I initially, when I was like trying to find the stamps that I like, when I haven't found the stamps that I like, I was like, maybe I'll collect some of these Olympic stamps, because I was like, into sports and like Olympics in that school. And I was also like, I remember then I started to collect some castle stamps. Stamps of like castles. There's a lot of those in the Great Britain stamps. They have a lot of castle stamps, or just stamps with like buildings in general. Like, I love them. And also stamps of like coat of arms. There's this series from this somewhere Slovenia, Slovakia area. No, Poland. I think they're Polish stamps. Somewhere there.
Yeah.
There's some series from around that area of like a coat of arms series. Yeah, somewhere there. So they have like these coat of arms series, which are really nice, that I really, really love. And actually, like, as I go into these stamps, like, then I didn't really consciously realize I love these things. And then I try to reflect onto like how Anissa picks certain stamps, you pick certain stamps. What kind of stamps do you pick?
A mix of like animals and also some because the thing is, I really like the artistic so there were a lot of, it's kind of like broad, doesn't really go into one specific, it's kind of like what I think looks really nice.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's like the animal ones and also the flora fauna in general, because they're like
really well
done and such. So but then there's also like some of those, like including that triangle one. There's this one I can't remember exactly what it is anymore, but this triangle, and it's like one solid color, but then it's really nice and striking.
So scout stuff,
so just in general, those kind of the colors
you
of
like
it,
the art of
it. I like, there's some of them which are like the detailed art, but some of them are like a more abstract kind of art.
Like, but sometimes arranging these stamps onto your stamp album like gives this nice palette.
Yes,
that's just really nice to look at. So especially like matching stamps, when you have a number of them, like, do not arrange them by penny or by like just put them in these bunch of colors. It creates a beautiful palette because they're like these very solid colors.
And because the thing about matching stamps is that they're like uniformed, one size, just one box of color. Yeah,
and that the way that the Queen Elizabeth's head,
portrait.
It's like her portrait is portrayed. It has this very nice angle, if you notice. It's like with her hair and like the shadow onto the neck. It creates this nice diagonal line, and it just creates such a nice illusion.
It's kind of like, well, it literally is a very nice like, graphic. I'm not sure how to word it, but
it's nice. It's really nice. But anyway, so the thing that I really love is that it really, like, you really realize like the things that you're really into of your period and also from the past, and you get to explore all of these many times through stamp. It's like it's really, as how it's like a time capsule. It's really like going through a sort of like, it makes you feel like it's almost like time traveling, but it's not exactly. You really get to see what people really appreciate, what kind of style, what kind of fonts even, like the fancy fonts that people find fancy.
Because the thing is, it's going to be designed based on
what will sell.
You're not going to design unless if it brings that aesthetic, but then it goes back to the point of what will sell. If, like, for example, you're commemorating something classic, you'll probably go for a more some classical. You probably go for more classical font. Classical look. So getting back to fonts and such.
But if no one is interested in those classical kind of things.
You won't even do that to begin with.
But another thing that I also think is interesting is that when you visit a post office and you observe what stamps are still in stock and what isn't, you can see the kind of like, because sometimes these stamps, they kind of just make stamps to commemorate something, but they don't really go with like stamp collectors of that time. So you can really observe what are the things that a certain demographic,
because
appreciate.
those will be the stamps that are still sold. Because the stamps that are, popular, they're sold out.
They're gone. So you can really see, because sometimes something may be so important to a large amount of people, but not to the stamp collectors. So that is very interesting to observe too. Like how different these group of people are. Like the individuality in it. And back to the original point, I think like capturing such a diverse, like there's such a diversity in stamp collecting and stamps in general, that really you can just capture any kind of interest, in stamps. And some people do bring the question of like, but then what's the point kind of thing. But because like you spend money on it if you buy them. If you just collect them, then you're just collecting them. But then for me, to be honest, I feel like in any form, like stamp collecting is a hobby, and in any form of hobby, there's always a pro and a con, and there's always
a give and take, I guess. Like
sort of like
because
like
you would spend on
if you're drawing, you spend
on your art,
pencils and paints and paper. If you are writing, you'd spend, at the very least, you spend your time on it.
Time is a resource.
That definitely. So like, and not renewable either. So like, I think it would always go back. I think we can talk about hobby one day. It will always go back to like looking into what can benefit you. Like, you enjoy this thing, what can you benefit from it? And for me, stamp collecting, as long as you're not like overly obsessed with it, because you're not supposed to be overly obsessed with anything, you can, like, for example, it can just bring you joy. It can just be a time to do something. But in our case, it's definitely a very beneficial family activity. Because
it's something that we share in common, and we kind of like do together, and so when we were excited about this together. And it just, I mean, in every time when someone goes to the post office, they'll be checking what.
Do you have any stamps?
Do you have any stamps?
Like, we're just going there to post something. Then it's like, hey, do you have any stamps, by the way?
So, and then when they show us like all the stamps that they have, they're selling, we'll be like, this person would like this one. This one.
So our mother would love this one.
It's something that will really be.
Similarly, when you go to a cafe and you're like, this person would like this cake, what's the use of buying that cake? You can say it's food and makes them full. It's not even healthy food sometimes, but it's like, it's a point of joy, and it makes your relationship better and all that. So, and alongside that, in stamp collecting, there's, for me personally, like, as how I can observe things like history, and you can have like records for when you are looking into something, like for example, when you want to look into the Jawi script. So there's also things like, for example, it's true, you can just Google it, but sometimes our sister learns like anatomy of like certain animals from stamps. It's true, she can just Google it, but she still, like, the thing is, because you're spending your time to do
the Jawi thing was not Googleable, because it was.
I was talking about the animal anatomy.
I just
the Jawi script. Yes, it's that not. Yes. So there's these little points of observation that's very interesting for when you're just spending your time on something and you have something to reflect. Then you can look it up. It's kind of like really cool, And for me, also observing like social observation is like really fun, There's also, of course, like serious collectors. Like, we're like casual collectors. We sometimes go to post office and go, do you have any interesting stamps? Oh, that's an interesting. We buy those stamps, and keep them. And plus, stamp is actually sometimes good investment. If you have an eye, like if you've been collecting stamps for a while, you've been observing what stamp sells and what don't, you like,
when the stamp is just released, and it's like still cheap-ish.
generally there's stamps would always, you can always sell a stamp at a more expensive price.
Yeah.
It's just that how much more expensive can you sell it at? And if you have a good eye, you can identify which stamps are going to sell. So it's a good investment.
Yeah, I mean, when you first buy it, it will obviously be like, the retail price.
Yeah.
But then eventually it will get even more expensive, and as time passes by, it gets rarer and more and more expensive. So like
so like, it's true you should be concerned about how much money you're spending on it, because you can spend that money to help others, but it's also true that if you buy a cupcake, it's gone. When you buy a stamp, cupcake is good, cupcake has its pro, but when you buy a stamp, it is an investment. You can sell it back.
And in general, if it's like, not taking cupcake, just any hobby that doesn't really bring, and I mean, you could say doesn't bring any sort of like that kind of same benefit as like hunger, but it brings you satisfaction and entertainment, and that is
in the end, how do you
value
it's about like, there's lots of things that will bring you joy, and entertainment and so on. How do you want to do that, to bring that joy into your life in a way that benefits yourself, not just in a satisfactory manner,
I think.
Like, as in not just how satisfied it makes you, but then also how does it benefit you in the sense of like growth, So in the case of like stamp collecting, for us, I'm not saying everyone else, for us, we would observe things. We would go into the history of the stamp. We observe like how was it like back then. I learned Russian alphabets from stamps. I learned the full Russian alphabet and how to pronounce them and certain Russian words from stamps, because there was this one collection of stamps we got from
Soviet
Hashim.
He's a friend of ours, an old friend of ours who
we haven't met in a long time.
I
am worried about how is he, but I have no clue how to reach him, because he's our father's friend, and our father passed away. But anyway, so he gave us like his collection of stamps because he's getting old and his children doesn't appreciate them, so he wants to give them to someone who appreciates them. He sold them, but then like at an affordable price, which we could have like. But anyway, so basically we got these stamps, a bunch of stamps. Amongst them, there were a lot of Russian stamps. And I just started to be like, I wonder what is this? And then one of them had a picture of, I think, Michelangelo. And I'm like, oh, interesting. It must be Michelangelo in, Russian writing.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started to pick up like, okay, this character means this. This is pronounced this way. And then eventually I learned how to pronounce. It's rusty now. I am not as like last time I could like just see and I could read it out. Now like sometimes I have to think a bit, because I haven't looked at them in a long time. But these are, I guess, one is that stamp collecting can bring you benefit if you try to make it bring benefit to you. And B, hobbies in general can bring you benefit if you try to bring it benefit. And it's always cool to have beneficial hobbies, like back to when we were talking about books, we said that fictions can still benefit you. Like, we read mostly non-fiction, and it's true that in general non-fiction will bring you more benefit if you're reading the right non-fiction. Some non-fictions do not benefit you, but fictions can still help you if you read it with the mindset of wanting it to help you, like there are some things that
it can even help, like, writing style and such, as we've talked.
There are some things that just would never benefit you, but there are some things that if you do it right, it benefits you. You don't use it right, it doesn't benefit you. So and then definitely the biggest one for me is like that family activity, because it really creates a sense of like oneness, like that's the thing that I really appreciate. Like, you can have hobbies, so many hobbies, and our parents were like trying to introduce us into hobbies. I think we can talk about hobbies one day. I think I mentioned that just now, but anyway, getting into hobbies is like, because you spend your time doing some things. You'd be lying if you say you spend each and every second of your life doing beneficial things. Sometimes you do things that are, like not so beneficial. So
sometimes you don't even enjoy the thing that you're doing, and it's not very beneficial.
A hobby, for me, one thing that's cool about hobby is that it helps you fill up these gaps of time in your life that sometimes you're like, you really don't really know what to do. It's those hobby can be a thing that you actively participate in, or it can be one of those what do you call it, like sub conscious things that you go to, like a habit, so a habit can be a hobby, and a hobby can be a habit. Browsing through your phone can be a hobby, it's just not like, I don't know now because I went to school so long ago, but usually when they say what's your hobby, you don't say browsing through your phone, because back then phones are like not like
browsable,
yes.
I mean, technically, you could browse through the internet with like super slow, I think it wasn't even
okay, if you're
like
using
2G
headphones, this might hurt, but it goes like this router, like, so dial up. Yeah. So but yes, browsing through your phone technically is a hobby, because technically hobbies are these things that you do in the middle of stuff. So stamp collecting is something that you can do as a hobby, and something that you can benefit from if you do it right, and if you have the right approach. And in our case, it becomes a very nice family activity.
Yes.
Where we just like have these gaps in our life, and then we sit down together. We can talk about them with each other. Like we can discuss them. Even until now, we're still like, we sometimes go like, and I think it's also nice because we reflect back to like, when we look at these stamps, we will remember how our father, bring us to like these stamp fairs and stamp exhibitions. And remember we once went to a stamp exhibition?
Which one?
At the museum. You remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So like having these memories are nice. So like now that he's passed away, it's sort of like when you look at these stamps, that some of them are the ones that he gave us.
Yeah.
Or some of them are the ones that you remember, like certain things he told us about them. Now you have, whenever you're doing this hobby that you eventually genuinely like because you've been doing it for so long, or even if in the case of our sister Anissa, I'm not sure about Ayman, our sister Ayman, like I do not know if she enjoys stamp collecting as much as we do, but even if she doesn't, whenever she like buy stamps or look at stamps,
she does
remember all of those times, and it brings like a nice sense of so like,
and in general she does feel happy buying them, so it's
but so it does like bring that sense of family. And so having, obviously so many other hobbies can be familyable, but stamp collecting in our case was so familyable and so nice, and like that is something that really got us,
and that's right why we were like passionate about it and such. I guess that's basically our take on it.
Do you remember when we were younger, our father and our mother, they have this session sometimes when our father is like having a long holiday from work. He'll have this session because like he works in an office. He's getting stamps all the time, so he cuts out all of these stamps and keep them in gigantic piles. And then one day when they have a long holiday, they have these stamp washing days. They would do this thing where they soak the paper into the water, then the stamps would float, and because the glue would be disentangle, and then they would, those what do you call them? Those food covers, tudung saji.
Yeah.
And they're like kind of like they have holes, so they would place them all onto those tudung saji and anything with holes to make it like dryable.
Yeah.
So they put it all across the dining room, and the whole dining room would be filled with stamps that are drying. That's a really nice memory. I thought it was going to end, but I just remembered. Stamp collecting is dying as a hobby, and I think talking about stamp collecting, we do need to address it. What do you think? Like, do you think we need to preserve stamp collecting?
I mean, there's always like the question about whether or not it's relevant. If it's not relevant anymore, this technically don't need to. But then to me, there's so many things in stamp collecting which are, first of all, if you do not collect those stamps anymore, those especially things like
the stamps that have existed,
those very old stamps, they're like, really,
even the ones that's less old, they'll get older
they
and
get
older
old eventually,
because these are historical records. They are social observations.
I mean, today's stamps will be 100 years old in 100 years.
Yeah, like,
so
I do believe that, like, the stamps that have existed need to be preserved. Like, perhaps you may argue you do need to keep each and every stamp in the world. I won't.
I mean, if you do not.
But like, what are you going to do with them?
Yeah,
throw them?
because
they're done. They're created. About creating new stamps, though, there is the concern of like the material used, to make new stamps, and like how these materials can be saved and used for other stuff. I would not really argue with that point because I do see how it's valid,
But at the same time, there's quite a lot of things that.
Well, that doesn't. But then for me, there is one point in stamps that is nice. 2 points. One is how you can capture, all of these things and stuff like that. Historically, social observationally wise, and stuff like that. And then as a product of that, one is that it becomes a historical record. Another is that you can actually, what do you call that? Like, sort of like share your culture.
Yes.
With another person.
Because it is very often that you could continue first.
When I have a pen pal called Paul.
Yeah.
A pen pal called Paul. It's funny. But anyway, I have a pen pal called Paul, who is, how do you call a Belgian person?
A Belgian.
A Belgian, yes, a Belgian chocolate.
Yes.
So, who's a Belgian from Belgium, So, we trade stamps and postcards, and from these stamps, you can see, like, the things. You can see their styles, their culture from the stamps. It's reflected, the things they appreciate, the things they're proud of. Because often when we make stamps, we make things that we're proud of. Like recently, we've been making a lot of stamps alongside, like, like wildlife, which is a common theme. Because we do also make stamps of like, and commemoration, like coronations and stuff. Ooh, I love their recent collection of Istana Negara.
Oh,
I appreciate it so much. I was like, this is a long time coming. Like, why didn't you make this earlier? But anyway, so they should make a better, like, they should make, there was this one stamp collection.
At the bright side, if they didn't make it earlier, you can't make it now.
No. They should make one series where they, like, identify unique architectural elements, yes, of these buildings, like architectural
it's like that one with
and interior design.
I think it was Shahla Mosque or what mosque?
Yes, there was one. Yes, I was thinking of it, but I can't remember what series was it. So they should do, where they like these unique features. And then the thing about stamps is that actually, when you look at those, they have these poster things that they come along with. Not poster, booklets. Sorry. Where they explain the philosophy. Yes, when they make a stamp, they don't just pick a thing and they put it. There's a philosophy in why they capture these things and how they capture these things, why they draw it in a certain way. So they can have like those stamps where they, capture certain elements of certain of these palaces, and they talk about, like why, what does this signify? That would be a very interesting series. I will be looking forward towards that. But so there's also stamps like, for example, recently they have stamps of like our local animation production because they're proud of them, So yes, we often make stamps of things that we're proud of. So when you look at the stamps from like a different country, you can see, they're proud of these things. And when you share them with a pen pal, instead of just buying a stamp, you can hear their perspective of the stamps, So I do think like, yes, we were talking about like the relevancy, like, I think it's a pity if you throw away old stamps. Like sometimes people throw, like, their parents pass away, they have these stamps, they don't know what to do, and they throw them away. Like, it's such a pity. Like,
we could at least get them to
look for someone who might appreciate it, or the National Archives. I think National Archives will accept stamps.
And like even if you don't want to give them, you could sell them and you could get money from that.
Sell them on eBay.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
anywhere.
We used to buy a lot of
stamps
stuff from
on
eBay.
eBay. But it just looks somewhere like, don't throw them. Like, they're done, they're made, and they are historical records.
Yeah.
Like stamps which are done, made, those are historical records, and you shouldn't throw them. I think that's like full stop. Whether you should still make stamps in the future, because stamps technically were like a means to send letters, which we have other means these days, not just in the sense of like as in messaging, but they have those other means of like creating a service where you don't have to buy a stamp, so you don't have to create that extra paper, piece of paper. I get it, but so like I understand that point of view a lot. I think whether or not you should keep on making stamps is a different conversation that someone else who's like more well versed and also like sort of like authoritative should talk about, because this is concerning a question of material
and culture and tradition.
Like culture and tradition, because it does come with a lot of unity and activity and culture and preservation. So it's like there's a bigger debate there. It's not as simple as waste of paper gone, or tradition preserved. Like, it's not as simple as that. I think that there is that balance of like,
there needs to be some compromise somewhat.
So that
which people have been doing, with like a lot of these new systems where they don't need to use stamps all the time. There has been motions for that.
Like sort of like, you have the choice to use the stamp. Yes, you may say that you have the choice to use more paper, but also like, if you just like want to send that extra, I mean, there's so many things that uses paper that's like you don't have to use that piece of paper, or boxes.
Back to what I said, there's so many other
packagings,
things. I mean, there's like some of these packagings when you buy things that they come in boxes,
in a
box, in
a bag, and it's like
and
how
then
many paper
in
do
there
you need to
they
use?
will have like these brochures.
10,000 of them.
This is
we can talk about that one one day, but so in the sense of like in the sense of stamps are there. Don't throw them away. They're historical records. Find someone who would appreciate them. In the sense of making new stamps, another debate, another question. Should you collect stamps? It's fun. It has lots of its benefits. We love collecting stamps. Yeah.
It's not that we're forcing you to, but then it's something.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's very meditating, that moment of like waiting for that stamp to come off from the paper. Sometimes you do not take them off the paper. They have different prices. That's another interesting thing. When you learned in stamp collecting and stamp selling, you'd understand sometimes stamps that are cut in a certain way is more expensive than a full stamp.
Or there's a mistake in the printing. That's like,
people want that mistake stamp. Like, it can range from 1 ringgit for a normal stamp and like 100 or 1,000 for a cut stamp.
I mean, those lines, they're just a bit cut off.
There's a fault.
There's a fault, or it's like printed slightly tilted.
And it's thousands. It's hilarious sometimes. So, and yes,
I remember that book about stamps, and they showed like old it's like a stamp catalog, if I'm mistaken. They show like this catalog. Old stamp. There's this one series where there's this one dot
and that one is like thousands. And yes, you may argue that the question of like serious collectors spending that much money on these things, but if you view it as an investment, technically it's an investment. Sometimes people just appreciate some things and they spend thousands on them. It's true that you can spend those thousands to feed people, and I wouldn't argue with that. But sometimes people like I would most probably not spend thousands on it
to that point.
But would I say it's immoral too? I can't say, like I'm not in their shoes. I don't know their story, like, but yeah, that's a story of stamps. It'd be cool to hear your story of stamps and whether or not you appreciate stamps, what do you think about stamps, stamp collecting, etc. And do tell us what else would you like to hear on our podcast. Sometimes
leave a message, leave a comment or an audio message. That will be nice.
Yeah, to hear your feedback. And also your thoughts on stamps and stamp collecting. Yeah, so until next time, we're excited to hear from you again. Thanks so much for tuning in, and bye!